48 Laws of Power. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. This means don't trust your friends too much and learn how to make use of your enemies. Be careful of your friends because they can easily betray you, but if you choose an enemy to work with, he can be more loyal than a friend because he has more reasons to prove himself. In reality, enemies are less dangerous than friends. If you don't have any enemies, make some. This is the story of the 9th century Byzantine Empire and Emperor Michael III. Michael was only 2 years old when his father, Emperor Theophilos, passed away. Soon after, Michael was declared the new emperor. Because he was just a child, his uncles helped govern the empire in his place. The most powerful among them was Bardas. Bardas was not an ordinary man. He was intelligent and had great ambition. He could have taken the throne for himself, but instead, he chose to remain loyal and support Michael's rule. When Michael III reached the right age, he needed a counselor, someone who could guide him and help manage the empire. In such a situation, anyone would have chosen someone like Bardas, but Michael didn't listen to anyone. He was a young man surrounded by luxury and pleasure. He didn't realize that people could easily betray him for the throne. A few years earlier, he had met Basil in the stables where a wild horse attacked him, and Basil saved his life. Michael was impressed by the way Basil handled the situation, so he promoted him from horse trainer to head of the stables. From that moment on, Michael gave Basil many gifts, money, wealth, and everything he wanted. But what Michael didn't realize was that this would become the biggest mistake of his life. Michael wanted to make Basil his counselor, but at that time, Basil had no knowledge of politics. So he was sent to study at some of the best schools in the Byzantine Empire. After a short time, Basil returned as not just educated, a very skilled and capable courtier, but sharp, ambitious. Now that Michael was emperor and Basil was his counselor, he started depending on Basil for everything. Whether it was an important decision or an issue in the empire, Basil always had a key role. Michael didn't see Basil as just a friend, he saw him like a brother. Many times Michael even ignored the advice of experienced counselors like Bardas, simply because he trusted Basil more. Michael was very happy because he believed Basil would always stay by his side in every moment, every place, and in everything. But there was one big problem: Basil's greed kept growing with each passing day. Basil was never satisfied with what he had. Even though Michael doubled or even tripled his salary, Basil always wanted more. His demands kept growing day by day, but the true side of Basil had yet to be revealed. By this time, Bardas had become the head of the army. Basil knew that Bardas was going to be his biggest problem, so he slowly started poisoning Michael's mind against him. He began telling Michael that Bardas, even though he was his uncle, was planning to take the throne for himself. He claimed that Bardas wanted to kill Michael and become emperor. Basil's plan worked. He convinced Michael that Bardas was a threat, and one day, in the middle of a crowd, Basil himself killed Bardas. After Bardas's death, Basil asked the emperor to make him the head of the army so that he could keep an eye on the people and control the entire empire. And once again, his wish is fulfilled. Now Basil has money, power, and the people, the three things that even Emperor Michael no longer had. A few years later, poverty spreads in the Byzantine Empire. Seeing such difficult conditions, Michael asks Basil to return the money he had borrowed from the empire. Basil directly refuses and walks away with a smile that makes it seem like he sees the emperor as weak and low. Just by seeing that smile, Michael realizes how big a mistake he had made, and now even if he wants to fix it, he can't. A few days later, Michael is drunk, and Basil enters his house with his men and captures him. The very next day, Michael's head lay beneath the sword, and Basil declared himself emperor. Michael's biggest mistake was blindly trusting his friend Basil, and never making him understand the value of the favors he had done for him. Because of this, Basil came to believe that everything he had received wasn't due to luck or generosity, but because of his own hard work and talent. That's why he never felt any gratitude toward Michael. Friendship and love can make a person blind. No one ever imagines that their closest friend could betray them. Michael didn't realize this either, not until his head was under the sword, and the one holding that sword was his own friend Basil. After the fall of the Han Dynasty, the Chinese Empire fell into chaos. Whoever became emperor was soon killed by conspiring generals, who would then form a new dynasty and appoint their own ruler. That ruler, in fear for his life, would eliminate the remaining generals. In turn, the new generals would begin plotting against him. This cycle repeated many times, and at that point, the Chinese throne had become the most dangerous position in the empire. In the year 959, General Zhao Guangyin became Emperor Song. He too was aware that, like those before him, he could be assassinated within a few years. So how could he break this cycle? To celebrate becoming emperor, he hosted a grand feast and invited all the powerful generals of his army. During the feast, everyone drank wine in royal glasses. After the celebration, when everyone had gathered and only the generals remained, he told the guards to leave the hall. At that moment, the generals began to suspect that their wine had been poisoned and feared they were about to be killed. But what Emperor Song said was something no general had expected. "I know that today doesn't feel like a celebration. In fact, you are all sitting here in fear, afraid that I might have you killed. Maybe you think your time has come, but I have never doubted any of you. You have stood by me, fought alongside me in battles, and helped me reach this throne. But I have one question. Is there anyone among you who truly loves my empire, my land from the heart? Is this crown, the one on my head, really worth the betrayal you're so afraid of?" At that moment, all the generals drunk on wine said, "Yes, we will stay loyal to you." But Song was thinking far ahead. He said, "Leave your positions as generals, and I'll give you whatever you want: wealth, fame, money, servants, women, everything." Hearing this, the generals went quiet and started thinking, because compared to a lifetime of risk and instability, this offer sounded much better. Any smart general would have chosen this option, and that's exactly what they did. The next day, all the generals resigned from their positions, and as promised, Song gave them everything they had asked for. Now Song could even take advice from them, because he had built a good relationship with his former generals. Emperor Song, in one move, turned dangerous wolves into loyal pet dogs who now couldn't even bite. A few years later, after much struggle, King Liu of the southern Tang dynasty finally surrendered to Emperor Song. Emperor Song invited King Liu to his palace and offered him a glass of wine. At that time in the Chinese Empire, poisoning wine was a common method of execution. Liu thought the same, that Song had poisoned the wine, and he hesitated to drink it. He said, "Majesty, I admit my crimes are worthy of death, but I beg you to spare my life. I truly cannot drink this wine." Hearing this, Song started laughing, took the glass from Liu's hand, and drank it himself, because there was no poison in it. From that moment, Liu became Song's most loyal and honest friend. At that time, there were many small kingdoms in China, and some of them were working against Song. One of those kings was Qian Chu, the ruler of Woyue. Song's ministers found out that Qin Chu had made a plan against the emperor. On the emperor's orders, he was invited to the capital so he could be arrested. But when Qin Chu arrived, instead of arresting him, the emperor gave him respect. While sending him back, he handed him a sealed envelope and said, "Open this on the way." When Qin Chu opened the envelope, it had proof that he was the one who planned against the emperor. Seeing this, he realized that the emperor knew everything, yet still showed him respect. Because of this, Song won Qian Chu's heart, and from that moment on, Qian Chu became loyal to him. There's a Chinese proverb that says, "Your friends are like the jaws of a wild beast. If you're not careful, they will bite you." The emperor, with one hand, pushed away his powerful generals by offering them wealth and riches, and with the other hand, turned his enemies into his closest friends. That's one of the reasons the Song dynasty ruled China for 300 years. It's natural for us to trust our friends, but this world is cruel, and in such a world your friends can be your biggest support. So why choose someone else when you can choose a friend? But never mix friendship with work. It makes things blurry. You can't put pressure on a friend, and most importantly, a friend won't feel the same sense of duty or gratitude toward you. When judging them, you won't judge by work, you'll judge by friendship. And that brings in emotions that have nothing to do with the job. You're here to get things done, not to make friends. That's why it's better to keep friendship and work separate. Instead of choosing a friend, choose someone who feels the need to prove themselves to you. A person like that will move mountains to earn your trust. And since we're talking about friends, let's also talk about enemies. Enemies are important in life. Without them we become lazy and never grow. Call them enemies or competition. You need someone to compete with. They keep you focused and alert. That's why sometimes it's better to treat your enemies as enemies and use them as fuel. A person who truly wants power never fears conflict. In fact, he wants enemies because he knows that it's his enemies who make him stronger. And unlike empty praise, victory over enemies actually means something. So does that mean we don't need friends at all? No, friends are very important in life, but you must know who your real friends are. Someone who always agrees with you, always takes your side, and says nothing even when you're wrong. That's not a true friend. A better friend is the one who points out your mistakes, who shows you where you need to change. And if you can't recognize the truth about the friends closest to you, they can become your biggest enemies, because they know exactly where to strike. That's why even Voltaire once said, "Lord, protect me from my friends, I can take care of my enemies." Missed Law 1, never outshine the master? Watch it here. Save our 48 Laws of Power playlist. We're adding more soon. Enjoying the series? Subscribe and hit the bell. See you in the next one.